Hello and welcome to lesson 1 of week 7. In this lesson, we are going to look at some built-in functions in Python. My name is Mildred. So far, we've used several functions that come pre-installed in Python or built-in in Python. We have seen when we did casting the int function, we have seen the string function, we've seen the float, we've also seen the input, and we saw the output function print, and then we have other functions that we have looked at when we did sequence types like list. When we want to create a list, we have the tuple, we have the dict, and then we have set also. So refer back to your previous lessons to see how we use these functions that we have done. But let's focus on some new functions that we have not looked at, and you'll see these most frequently in your programming journey. Now let's look at the range function. We've seen this previously, but we didn't look at range on its own. Range function is just used to generate a sequence of numbers. Let's say you want to generate 3 numbers now. So you want to say range 3 like this, and let's say we want to print this out. We'll say for I in range 3. Now there are other parameters you can put here or other arguments you can put here that you can specify the start and the number of steps that it takes. So let's say we want to print I. When we run this, we have 0, 1, 2. Okay, because we say 3, it starts from 0 by default. If you want it to start from 1, you put 1 there, and then you have this printed 1, 2. All right. If you want it to start from 1 and you want it to end at 20, and you want it to skip every 2. So if this is 0, then it is going to do even numbers. If it's 1, it's going to do odd numbers. Okay, so this is how we use the range function when you want to generate a sequence of numbers. So you control them using the first parameter to say where it starts from, the last parameter or the third parameter to say how many steps or how many skipping. So if you start from 0, it skips 1, goes to 2. If you put it 3 like this, from 0 it skips 1 and 2 and starts at 3 like that. So remember that the starting point determines where it lands when it skips. So we have another function, the enumerate function. Now this returns an iterator with index and value pair. Let's look at it. For instance, you'll see this most commonly in job interviews where you're asked to do something and you want to return the index position and that value. Let's say we have a list. Now you want to do something, you want to return the index position and the values for each one. You can now say for key value in enumerate like this, and then my list want to return. So let's print key and value, and when I run this, I have index position 0A, 1B, 2C. Alright, so what it does is just return iterator with index and value pair. Alright, so you want to try all of these different functions and see what they do. If we want to combine multiple iterables and we want to combine it into a tuple, we have another function, the zip function. This function will help you a lot when you do something. For instance, let's say we have a list of students, right? And then we have, let's just write the list here. Let's say this is Jane, and then we have a list of ages. Now we want to have a tuple of the student name and the student's age. We can use the zip function to say print, we want to zip student's ages like this. And let's run this and we see zip object. Okay, now because this is a zip object, we want to zip student name. We want it to come out maybe as a list or so. So we want to x is equal to zip this, and then we print list cast to a list x, something like that. And then we print this out. We have Jane 20, John 18, Horizon 14. So we have the tuples of them in the list. So you see how we use the zip. Also, we have another function, sorted. I think we used this previously when we looked at the different methods for this different sequence type. Now it just returns a sorted list of elements. So when you say, let's just use a print statement directly here. Then we say we print sorted and we want to print a list. Let's have a list of numbers. I will say it, and when we print this, it should just return the list of sorted numbers 5, 8, 12, 34. We use the reverse function also to return an iterator that accesses the elements in reverse order. So when we say this, let's change this to reversed. And when we print or clear here, we have, sorry, when we print reverse this, it's not going to work, right? Let's do it like we did the zip. Let's cast to a list so you can print it out. So we'll print reversed, and we'll have 5, 8, 34, 12. What it just does is reverse the other 5, 8, 34, 12 from back to forward. Alright, we have other functions like the OR. Now you need to know this when you get to the advanced course, and especially when you want to write job interview. And I'll tell you something funny about technical interviews. You might be a developer for 30 years and still fail those interviews because they go back to the foundation of strings, sequence types. They go back to things like data structure and algorithms. And most developers who have been 30, 40 years in the field have not been using these things. Some of the basic concepts are not things that readily comes to mind. And so you'll find people who are already extremely experienced still fail these exams. And so that's why you want to focus deeply on knowing this in the vanilla way, knowing what exists. You don't have to keep it in your head. You just have to know what exists and where to find it when you need it. All right. So we'll have an all function that returns true if all the elements in an iterable are true. For instance, let's say this will always return true. Let's say we want to have, so let's print this, and it will return true because all are true. But if I change this to 0, then it will return false because 1 is not true. Right. We also have any that returns true if any of the iterable is true. So now it's false. When I use any, this is going to return true. Then we have type function that we've seen before to see the data type of something. All right. When we send the data type here is class list because we put a list of different items there. Now we have the ID function like this and just returns unique identifier or like a memory address of an object. So when we have like the ID, let's do something simpler. I'll say x is equal to 10, then I'll print ID of x. So this, I just want this to return the memory address of the object. So when I run this, I should have it here, right? We have another one like the directory function, dir. And this just returns a list of valid attributes and the methods of an object. So when I say I want to print directory, let me just have a list of all methods. I won't put anything here, so I'll just put an empty list and want this to print it. So when I run this, I'll have the list of all valid attributes and method of an object. Alright, next week when we look at object-oriented programming, we're going to look at some of these things and then you understand what they're all about. Then we have, let's say we want to display like help documentation for an object. We can just use help like this, right? And it displays the help documentation for the string. You can do that for int and get the help for the string object int. Alright, so we have, these are just basic functions that we use for different things. We also have like built-in function that we use to have mathematical analysis, or if we want to have some complex mathematical calculations, we have something like ABS here. And this, for those who move on to data analysis course, you will see that you need a lot of mathematical functions to perform operations easily. Now this will return the absolute value of a number, and when we say absolute value in mathematics, we mean the distance from 0 on the number line. So 0 on either side of the number line is an absolute value. Now regardless of the direction, it is always non-negative. When we say non-negative is, if I say the absolute value of -5, we will get 5, right? If we say the absolute value of 5 is 5. So absolute value is just a non-negative value of a number. So let's do an example. Let's say x is equal to -5 and we say y is equal to -10. Now the absolute value of each of these will be 5 and 10. Normally when we say x plus y, let's say z is equal to x plus y. Now I want to print z. When I run this, I have z as -15, which is correct in maths. But I don't want to have the minus sign. I want the absolute value, so I'll put ABS of z. And now this is going to be equal to 5 plus 10. So we're not going to get the negative sign anymore, and we're going to get it 15 positive sign. So when you want to get the absolute value, you use this. We have another function, the divmod function, written divmod. Now this function returns a tuple of the quotient and the remainder when you do a division operation. Okay, so let's try and see what this divmod does. So we have x, let's make this x 10 and let's make y to be 5. Let's change this. Now we want to get the quotient, so 10 divided by 5, we're going to get 2 and the remainder is 0. So when I come here, so I'll use div mode here and I'll put div mode x, y, like this. So what it will do is to divide x by y and then returns a tuple of the quotient and the remainder. So when I run this, I have 2, 0 because 10 divided by 5 is 2, the remainder is 0. When I put 3, we're going to have 10 divided by 3 is 3, the remainder is 1, so we'll have 3, 1, like that. So that's what we use this for. If you need to perform any mathematical operation, you are building a calculator or you are building something that you want to auto-grade, this is one of the functions you will need. Also, we've seen the sum function previously, or maybe in the advanced course, when you use sum to get the sum of all the elements in an iterable. Let's say we have x is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want to get the sum of all of these. We can print out sum x like that, and when we print this out, we're going to get the sum of everything. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 of 5. So when they say return the sum of all of the items in the list, you can use the sum function. Alright, if you want to get the minimum, like let's say what's the minimum number here, we know that the minimum is 1. Let's switch it over. So now we get the minimum of x, we know the minimum number here is 1. We want to get the max, you can use the max function. We know the max is 5. And so we'll print out 5 there. So like want to do like maybe 2 raised to the power of 3 or something like that. We have the power function like this, and we can say x equal to 2, y equal to 3, and we want to have the power, we want to use the power function like this to do the power of x and y, which is 2 raised to the power of 3, which will give us 8. Another thing we can do with the power function is to specify a third parameter. Let's say z here. This will do the modulo, right? So if we do 2 raised to the power of 3, we get 8. When we say 8 modulo 3, for instance, so the remainder of 8 divided by 3 is going to be 2. So when we do this, and we'll now put z here, it's going to give us, so what we are doing now is using it to do the power and modulo at the same time. So we'll get 2, and that's what you return here. So if you want to perform that kind of operation, you can put a third argument there. We have one that you will use very commonly also, the round function, written round like this, and it returns a floating point number rounded to a given number of digits that you're going to specify. And if you don't specify anything, it rounds it to the nearest whole number or the nearest integer. Let's say we have, let's round something else. Let's say we have 3.14159, right? We want to round this, and we didn't provide a second parameter, so it's going to round this to the nearest integer, which will end up being 3, right? Because we don't have a second parameter. But if we now have a second parameter 2, it's going to round this to 2 decimal place, and we'll have 3.14. So there are several other functions that you can take a look at, but this is where we end this lesson. You now have an idea of how functions are used. You just have to read about them, know what exists, and find them when you need them. Thank you, and see you in the next lesson.